Much of Canada's economy in the 19th century was heavily reliant on horses, oxen, and donkeys to pull goods and services across the rugged landscape of British Columbia. As a result, Canada's animal welfare movement was influenced by a high dependence on animals as a resource for labor and leisure. So, with such a heavy economic reliance on animals, how were the animals treated? Were there laws to protect animals like there are today? Who benefited the most from these laws? Over the course of this video, we will explore these questions and the rise of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, or SPCA, in British Columbia. While many laws and organizations were created in an attempt to prevent animal cruelty, the wealthy business owner class made sure that they were not detrimental to the economic or recreational interests of the movement's supporters. Many laws governing the treatment of animals were created to improve animal productivity and their value as commodities, as well as to regulate the practices of working-class laborers who relied on animals to do their work. While the wealthy enjoyed a number of hobbies and pursuits that relied on cruel animal practices, such as fox hunting, they enforced animal welfare legislation that unfairly charged minority and working-class people with fines and imprisonment. Before we explore the animal welfare history of Canada, we must first go to 19th century England, where many of these laws originated. There once was a man named Humanity Dick. British Member of Parliament Richard Martin was a staunch advocate for animal rights and went about enforcing what is believed to be the first ever legislated animal rights laws in 1822, with the establishment of the Cruel Treatment of Cattle Act in England. He believed animals should be protected by the law, and so he was given the moniker Humanity Dick for his empathetic nature. The Cruel Treatment of Cattle Act was the first of many policies in England which distributed fines and other punishment for the mistreatment of animals. But there were also organizations dedicated to the welfare of pets, labor animals, and the animals that we eat. This includes the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. The first SPCA was created in England in 1824, 2 years after the first Animal Welfare Act passed in England, and in 1840 it became the Royal SPCA, when it received the stamp of approval from well-known animal lover Queen Victoria. The first act to protect animals in what would become Canada was passed in 1825 in Nova Scotia, with an equally long name. An act to prevent the cruel treatment of horses, sheep, or other cattle. Within this act, those who wantonly and cruelly maim, wound, or otherwise hurt any such horses, sheep, or other cattle under their ownership or charge could face a fine or imprisonment. Over time, more acts were passed in Canada, and today animals are, to a degree, protected by the laws of the federal and provincial governments. In 1895, the British Columbia Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act was passed, and in 1896, the BC SPCA, or the British Columbia Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, was founded. The founding members of the BC SPCA were prominent members of the wealthy elite in the province, including coal baron and later premier James Dunsmuir, who contributed one of the first large initial donations to the society, the brothers Arthur and Lindley Creese, as well as Justice Archer Martin, who was the grandson of Humanity Dick himself. The records of the BC SPCA, which span between 1896 and 1980, located in the British Columbia Archives, allow researchers to explore the history of this society, revealing names of the original founders, their concerns, and efforts to combat the mistreatment of animals. At the BC SPCA's founding, it is noted that there were many women present. However, details about the early involvement of women is largely missing from the records. It was not until 1912, 16 years after the foundation of the BC SPCA, that women were given a seat at the table with the foundation of its Ladies' Auxiliary. At first, the auxiliary was given very marginal duties, but with the First World War ongoing, women were given the opportunity to take on a larger role. By the mid-1920s, the Women's Auxiliary was dissolved, likely due to the fact that women now made up most senior positions within the SPCA. When the British Columbia Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act was passed, it provided them with police powers. They were able to hire an inspector who was given the authority to answer calls of suspected animal cruelty and issue tickets and fines if necessary. Many of the records note that fines were given to working-class individuals and members of Chinese, First Nations, and other racialized communities. Some offenses found in the BC SPCA ledgers include reports of these communities allegedly mistreating rats, horses, and livestock. There were also white-owned businesses that had multiple complaints about animal cruelty from members of the public and even from within the SPCA. For example, these complaints were registered in the Society's meeting minutes and also published in the newspapers concerning the large zoos in Victoria, the Beacon Hill Park Zoo and French's Menagerie. At these zoos, visitors could see bears, wolves, lions, tigers, giraffes, and other wild animals up close. The complaints discuss the poor state of the animals' enclosures, which were deemed ineffective as several predatory species escaped, as well as the sickly countenance of the animals themselves. A headline from the Daily Colonist reads, "Painful conditions at the Park Zoo. Inadequate and uncomfortable quarters for animals and birds." The BC SPCA ledgers contain reports from an inspector who visited these establishments to ensure that there was no danger to the animals or the public. His reports explain that everything at the zoos were in order and the complaints were unyielded. Since the foundation of Canada's animal welfare laws and organizations, how Canadians interact with animals has changed dramatically. Fox hunting is a hobby of the past, and our reliance on animals for transportation has drastically changed over the last century. Animals in the 21st century are still prevalent in the lives of Canadians as we consume and seek out the companionship of animals great and small. If you have enjoyed this video about Canadian history, please consider subscribing to our channel. The Vancouver Island Local History Society is a non-profit dedicated to the development and support of heritage work that is inclusive, diverse, and representative of communities in the past and present.